The day Steve died, my life collapsed around me like a house of cards. I had never felt so alone. My husband, the love of my life, was gone. We met 2 years ago at the hospital where we both worked. Steve was a respected surgeon, admired by his colleagues for his skill and dedication, and I worked in medical administration. We fell in love quickly and deeply. When we got married, Steve asked me to quit my job to focus on being a homemaker. It wasn't an easy decision, but I wanted to support his vision of a family. I was 5 months pregnant when Steve suddenly collapsed at work, his heart giving out without warning. By the time I arrived at the hospital, it was too late. His smile, his gentle laugh, all the things I loved about him were gone forever. But while I grieved for my husband, my in-laws, who once seemed so kind, quickly turned against me. What started as subtle remarks soon grew into something darker. Steve's funeral was a blur of sorrow and condolences, but it wasn't long before my mother-in-law's true feelings surfaced. "Emma, if you had paid more attention to Steve's health, this wouldn't have happened," she said one night, her voice sharp with accusation. Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Could she really be blaming me for his death? I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but I was too consumed by my grief. I had already blamed myself 1,000 times over in my mind, wondering if there had been signs I'd missed. My sister-in-law, Abby, was no better. She avoided me at first, her cold silence like a wall between us, but soon the cruel comments started from her too. "You're just a burden now," she said one afternoon as she passed me in the hallway. "Why are you even still here?" It seemed that with Steve gone, they no longer saw any reason to keep up the pretense of kindness. I didn't understand it. We had gotten along well before his death, or so I had thought. Not long after Steve's death, they started demanding money. My mother-in-law sat me down one morning while Abby stood nearby, arms crossed and a sneer on her face. "You're living in this house, so it's only fair that you contribute more," she said. I was confused at first. Steve had been paying for most of the household expenses, and we had always managed fine. But she wasn't asking for just a little help. She demanded $5,000 a month from me. My stomach dropped at the number. "But I don't have any income right now," I said, my voice shaking. With the baby coming, I was saving what Steve left for our future. My words seemed to bounce off her like they didn't matter. "Steve left money for you, didn't he?" she asked, her tone cold and dismissive. "That should be more than enough." Abby chimed in with her usual disdain. "What else are you going to do with it? Just sit around feeling sorry for yourself." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them how much I was hurting, but I was trapped, vulnerable, and overwhelmed. For weeks, I tried to make things work. I stayed in the house, doing more than my share of the chores, cooking, cleaning, and even helping care for my father-in-law, who was bedridden. He was the only person in the house who treated me kindly. He would often apologize, saying, "I'm sorry you're going through this, Emma. I know you're doing your best." But even his kindness couldn't lessen the weight of my mother-in-law and Abby's cruelty. Every day, they found new ways to make me feel like I didn't belong. Abby would criticize how I folded the laundry or complain about the meals I made. My mother-in-law would remind me constantly that I was only there because of Steve, and now that he was gone, I had no real place in the family. The $5,000 demand hung over my head like a cloud. I had some savings, but I was terrified of what would happen when that money ran out. I wanted to leave, but I didn't know how to, especially with the baby coming. Then, one afternoon, I received a call that changed everything. It was my father-in-law. His voice was soft, almost apologetic, as he asked me to come to his room. "I have something to show you," he said, handing me a small voice recorder. My heart raced as I held the device. What could this be? I pressed play, and what I heard sent a chill down my spine. It was a conversation between my mother-in-law and Abby. They were laughing, mocking me, but that wasn't the worst part. They were plotting to take all of Steve's savings and leave the house, abandoning my father-in-law in a care facility. "Emma's too stupid to figure it out," Abby sneered. "We'll just take what's left, and then we'll be rid of her." My mother-in-law laughed in agreement. "She'll never see it coming. As soon as we get what we want, she's gone." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The people who had promised to be my family were planning to take everything and leave me with nothing. My hands trembled as I realized just how deep their betrayal went. I sat in silence for what felt like hours. Zrenia, trying to process what I had just heard. The betrayal was deeper than I could have imagined. It wasn't just about money. It was about their complete disregard for me, for the life Steve and I had built together, and even for their own father. I wanted to confront them, to scream at them for what they were planning, but I knew I had to be smart. If I confronted them now, they might push me out before I had a chance to protect myself. I needed a plan, and I needed help. My father-in-law, seeing the shock on my face, spoke up softly. "We can't let them get away with this, Emma," he said. "But we have to be careful." His words were the lifeline I needed. Together, we started to formulate a plan. He suggested that we wait until my mother-in-law and Abby were distracted, perhaps by the vacation they had been planning for weeks. It would be the perfect opportunity for me to leave, but we had to time it just right. A few days later, I approached my mother-in-law and Abby with what I hoped would be the perfect bait. "I know things have been stressful lately," I said, forcing a smile. "Why don't you two take that trip you've been talking about? It might help clear your heads." At first, they seemed suspicious. "Why would you suggest that?" Abby asked, narrowing her eyes. But I played the part well, telling them I needed time alone to figure things out and that a break would be good for everyone. Eventually, they agreed. They booked a 2-week trip to Europe, leaving me behind with my father-in-law. The day they left, I started packing. I knew I couldn't stay in that house a moment longer. My father-in-law helped as much as he could, apologizing over and over for everything that had happened. "You deserve better, Emma," he said. "I wish I could have done more to protect you." His words touched me, but I knew this was something I had to do for myself. It was time to move on. As soon as they were gone, I moved out of the house, taking only what I needed. I called my parents and told them everything. They were furious at how I had been treated, but relieved that I was finally getting away. They welcomed me back home with open arms. My father-in-law, now safe in a care facility, reassured me that he would be fine and that it was time for me to start fresh. I felt a strange mixture of relief and fear. I was free from their control, but I had no idea what the future held. The day after I moved out, I received a call from the private investigator my father-in-law had hired. The report confirmed what we already suspected. My mother-in-law and Abby had taken their lovers on the trip. The detective had gathered enough evidence to expose their affairs, and my father-in-law planned to use it in his divorce proceedings. It felt like justice was finally on the horizon, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. 2 weeks later, the day my mother-in-law and Abby returned from their trip, they stormed into my parents' house. I had been expecting them, but their desperation still caught me off guard. "Emma, you need to come back to the house," my mother-in-law demanded, her voice panicked. "There's been a misunderstanding." Abby, standing beside her, looked pale and shaken. "We're in trouble," she whispered. "Please, you have to help us." I raised an eyebrow, waiting for them to continue. "The trip, the expenses. We can't pay it off," my mother-in-law said, her voice cracking. "We thought you were paying for it, but now there's a $20,000 bill and we're being sued." They went on to explain that their affairs had been exposed. The families of their lovers were demanding compensation, and my father-in-law had filed for divorce, using the detective's report as evidence. They were facing a financial disaster, and they had nowhere else to turn. I stood there, listening to their pleas, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. For months, they had treated me like an outsider, like I was worthless. They had blamed me for Steve's death, made unreasonable demands, and planned to take everything he had left behind. And now they expected me to help them? I shook my head slowly. My heart hardened against their cries. "You think I'm going to help you after everything you've done?" I asked, my voice steady. "You stole from me, you lied, and you tried to ruin my life. Now you want my forgiveness? My money?" Abby started to cry, her tears falling fast. "We didn't mean it, Emma. We were grieving too. Please, just help us this one time and we'll make it right." But I had heard enough. "No," I said firmly. You'll have to face the consequences of your actions. My mother-in-law's face twisted in rage. You'll regret this, Emma. You'll regret leaving us like this. But her words didn't scare me anymore. I was done being afraid of them. I shut the door in their faces and turned back to my parents, who had been standing quietly behind me. My father placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Emma, he said. You don't owe them anything. I nodded, but the weight of everything that had happened still lingered in my chest. It wasn't just about Steve's death anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my future, and the future of my child. As the weeks passed, my mother-in-law and Abby's lives fell apart. They were forced to sell their home to pay for the legal fees and compensation. The once proud women were now seen as disgraced, their reputations destroyed by their own selfishness. Abby, once so confident, now struggled to make ends meet, working multiple jobs to pay off her debts. My mother-in-law, once the pillar of the community, was now an outcast. They had no one to blame but themselves. Meanwhile, my father-in-law was free at last. His divorce from my mother-in-law was finalized, and he began a new chapter in his life, free from the toxic influence of his wife and daughter. As for me, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, and she became the center of my world. Every time I looked at her, I was reminded of Steve and the love we shared. I knew that I had made the right choice in leaving behind the toxic environment his family had created. With the support of my parents, I slowly rebuilt my life. I returned to my career as a doctor, determined to honor Steve's memory by continuing the work we had both been so passionate about. It wasn't easy at first, balancing motherhood and my career, but I knew I was doing it for both myself and my daughter. One day, as I stood in the hospital after a long shift, holding my baby in my arms, I realized something. I had survived. Despite everything that had been thrown at me, the betrayal, the grief, the cruelty, I had come out the other side stronger. And as I looked into my daughter's eyes, I knew that the future was bright. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Steve would have been proud.